Hey crew, it's Pitt and I am back with some more ancient lore. Today we're diving back into the works of Marcus Aurelius. This is the Meditations. Today we're at book 4. We are reading aloud and discussing as we go along the various topics that are brought to light in the text. It's not the format for everybody, but some people seem to enjoy it, so you're more than welcome to tag along. But before we begin, if you are unfamiliar with me, any of my unconventional beliefs, or if at any point in time I lose you in the terminology, there are several playlists linked in the corner up here in the box down below, along with the source material, so that you can get clearer definitions of me, who I am, and what I stand for. With that being said, we are going to dive into Book 4 of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. We don't have a location for this one, so it's just general. Our inward power, when it obeys nature, reacts to events by accommodating itself to what it faces, to what is possible. It needs no specific material. It pursues its own aims as circumstances allow. It turns obstacles into fuel. As a fire overwhelms what would have quenched a lamp, what's thrown on top of the conflagration is absorbed, consumed by it, and makes it burn still brighter. Act according to the nature, right? We've discussed that before. I don't know that there's really a need to expound upon it again. There is a tendency for him to repeat his topics over and over again, but you should be acting in accordance to that which you are being led to act. When you do so, it works for you and the flames get brighter. No random actions. None, not based on underlying principles. Make sure that everything that you do indeed has a purpose and that that purpose is aligned with what you want to do. 3. People try to get away from it all, to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You always wish that you could too, which is idiotic. You can get away from it anytime you like, by going within. Nowhere you can go is more peaceful, more free of interruptions than your own soul, especially if you have other things to rely on. An instant's recollection, and there it is, complete tranquility. And by tranquility, I mean a kind of harmony. So keep getting away from it all, like that. Renew yourself, but keep it brief and basic. A quick visit should be enough to ward off all and send you back ready to face whatever awaits you. What's there to complain about? People's misbehavior? But take into consideration that rational beings exist for one another, that doing what's right sometimes requires patience, that no one does the wrong thing deliberately, and the number of people who have feuded and envied and hated and fought and died and have been buried. And keep your mouth shut. Or are you complaining about the things the world assigns you? But consider the two options, Providence or Atoms, and all the arguments for seeing the world as a city. Or is it your body? Keep in mind that when the mind detaches itself and realizes its own nature, it no longer has anything to do with ordinary life, the rough and the smooth either one. And remember all that you've been taught and accepted about pain and pleasure. Or is it your reputation that's bothering you? But look at how soon we're all forgotten. The abyss of time that swallows it all. The emptiness of all those applauding hands. The people who praise us, how capricious they are, how arbitrary. And the tiny region in which it all takes place, the whole earth, a point in space. And most of it uninhabited. How many people there will be to admire you and who they are. So keep this refuge in mind, the back roads of yourself. Above all, no strain and no stress. Be straightforward. Look at things like a man, like a human being, like a citizen, like a mortal. And among the things you turn to, these two. 1, that things have no hold on the soul. They stand there unmoving outside of it. Disturbance comes only from within, from our own perceptions. That everything you see will soon alter and cease to exist. Think of how many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Our life is only perception. If thought it, well, we'll stop at that, right? Let's go back up and we're going to start at the top and come down because that was a fairly long one. The refuge of your mind is a thing. Now, I have what is called aphantasia. If you were unaware, that means that I cannot willfully envision anything. I cannot close my eyes and see a sheet of paper, a blade of grass, a box. I can't even change colors through my own volition. So I cannot desire to do that, but I can meditate. I do often. It is an inward turning, and it does indeed bring peace. I don't have to imagine a mountain to find peace within myself. I don't have to imagine the beach. I don't have to imagine the forest or any of those things. I find the peace within myself simply from going in within, right? It is not something external at all in any way, shape, or form. But it does bring peace, and it is a harmony within yourself that it brings, and so I agree with this. Renew yourself, yes. Keep it brief and basic, okay. A quick visit should be enough to ward off. That is him talking about visiting the mountains in his mind, and that's fine. Like, make yourself your mental palace and do what you need to do. What is there to complain about? People's misbehavior? Rational beings exist for one another. That is true, but not everyone is a rational being. That is true. There are a lot of completely irrational people here around us all the time, every single day. Doing what's right does indeed require patience, more often than not. That no one does the wrong thing deliberately is not entirely true as well. You can take drugs. You can go and buy fentanyl today, and that is absolutely the wrong thing every single time. It doesn't matter if you're addicted to a different drug and you're trying to get off of it, or you're trying to chase the high, or whatever. Whatever reason you're getting fentanyl for is the wrong thing. If it's not in a medically controlled situation in which it is used as anesthesia, you are doing it wrong. And you are deliberately choosing the wrong thing. Now, you may not understand that, but you're doing it. I talk all of the time about the MBTI, which I have changed. It is different. And how, in one particular section of that, you intentionally choose the wrong thing. That happens all the time. And I say this, nobody ever says I'm going to do the wrong thing, but they do it. Some people do it deliberately. That is true too. You know it's wrong to rob a bank, and yet people do it. You know it's wrong to speed, and yet people do it. You know that it is wrong to lie, and yet people do it. People choose the wrong thing deliberately all the time. Just not normally on a grand scale, right? Normally you think that you are doing the best thing. Not that it never happens, but that most of the time it never happens. The number of people who have feuded and envied and hated and fought and died and been buried. Okay, whatever. The grand scope of things, you are minuscule. Yes, true. Keep your mouth shut. Sometimes, not often. Are you complaining about the things the world assigns to you? Sometimes it is worth it to complain. We have the one complaint rule, right? We talk about it all the time. You get one good time to just bitch about it. Moan. Get it out. And then you need to be figuring out something to do about it. So complaining by itself is generally useless. It's just a cathartic process that gets the poison out of you for a minute. Providence or atoms is God or random chance. And all the arguments for seeing the world as a city. And that is a good way of looking at it. Like, you can look at it as one cohesive body. One cohesive person with several different components. This guy's a finger, and that guy's a toe, and that guy right there is the butthole. Is it your body? Keep in mind, when the mind attaches itself and realizes its own nature, it no longer has anything to do with ordinary life. You have to live regardless. You cannot detach yourself completely from here, and there is no need or even cause to do so. Remember all you have been taught and accepted about pain and pleasure. Pain and pleasure are both going to come, and you should make the best out of them no matter what. Complaining about them is not really going to do anything, but they are going to happen. There will be pain, and it is okay to be upset about the pain. That does not mean to wallow in it. That does not mean that you become hopeless or you are despondent or anything along those natures. Accept it. It is pain. It is coming, but you don't have to like it. Is it your reputation? Look how soon it's forgotten. Okay, whatever, but you still have to live here. If your reputation is being tarnished, then it is okay to be upset about that. You have to live among people. Live in such a way that they cannot tarnish your reputation is one way of looking at it that will probably get you there better than just forgetting about it or not worrying about it or just dismissing it. You do not have to accept the fact that people talk shit about you. You don't. The people who praise you, they are capricious and arbitrary. That is true. I have seen what you cheer. Boo away. The tiny region in which it all takes place. The whole earth is a point in space and most of it uninhabited. Bear in mind when this was. We were still in the middle of the Roman Empire. As a matter of fact, this was just before Christianity took over the Roman Empire, and here we are. They knew about space. You know what? The earth is not flat. We are on a globe. We are moving through space in several different directions all at the same time. Keep the refuge of your mind for yourself. That is true. Be mentally disciplined. Be straightforward. Look at things like a man. Accept the things that are coming. Deal with them. Right? It is okay to be upset. It's not okay to dismiss. Like a citizen and a mortal, those are the same. And among the things you turn to, these two. Things have no hold on the soul. That is an important thing to remember. All of these things will pass away. There is something on the other side of it, and I believe it is a wonderful thing. That everything you see will soon alter and cease to exist. Think of the many changes you've already seen. The world is nothing but change. Our life is only perception. There are two parts to this one. How much do you think his life changed? Like, consider us today. Consider how much has changed in the scope of my life. I am 47 years old. I was born in 1977. In 1977, we had color televisions just barely, right? Television was still not relatively new. It was a few decades old by then, but color television was relatively new. Our telephones were wired into the wall. There was no such thing as a cell phone. There was barely even a computer, and there was no computers in anyone's homes. The ability to cast yourself across the internet and talk to random strangers that you have never met before was completely unheard of. For the most part, humanity was fairly static for several centuries, including these. At least several centuries, right? And so, how much really changed? But to him, it was an enormous amount of change. What do you think would have happened if they would have got cars, right? Or even our modern weaponry, right? They were still walking around with gladiuses and shields. They were still walking around shooting arrows at people. Our world has changed significantly since then, but things change. You will see many more changes, I am sure, and not all of them are good, but not all of them are bad either, and you're going to see all of them. Our life is only perception is the second part of that, and that's the more important part of it. I talk about this in other playlists, such as the esoterical one, where you don't actually see anything. You don't. You see the reflection of things. I use my phone all the time. This is not a blue phone case. You think it is because it appears blue, right? But it is not. What it is the absence of blue in the phone case allows the light to reflect the blue back to your eyes. So you're not actually seeing, right? You're seeing the blue that is not absorbed by the phone. So the phone is actually probably the opposite color of blue. You don't actually see anything, though. What you see is your mind changing the perceptions of the photons entering your ocular nerves and the translation of what that is into your mind. You don't actually see anything. You see the reflection of light off of things at best. Sometimes you can see the original source of light, but normally that is somewhat painful to experience. Even if you're looking at a light bulb, seeing the emanation of the light can be a little bit dangerous. Our life is only the perception of that which we see, or hear, or feel, or touch, or whatever. You don't ever actually touch anything either. That's going to be a hard concept for you to understand, but think about it this way. If you were actually being able to touch this phone, your finger would melt into the phone. Instead, you were held on a microscopic level, atomically separate from the phone. You're not able to actually touch it. There is a force between your finger, or on the outside of your finger, that keeps you from actually touching. But you have the sensation of touching it because of that force. That's a little bit of a wild concept, but if you can wrap your mind around it, this makes a lot more sense. It is true. Our life is only perception, and how you deal with it makes a big difference in your life. If you go to the Esoterica playlist, particularly the Hermetic parts, you will see a thing called mental alchemy, which is rising above the circumstances through the use of your own mental powers. It is described in some detail there and in some detail in other places. 4. If thought is something we share, then so is reason. What makes us reasoning beings? If so, then the reason that tells us what to do and what not to do is also shared. And if so, we share a common law, and thus are fellow citizens, and fellow citizens of something. And in that case, our state must be the world. What other entity could all of humanity belong to? And from it, from this state that we share, come thought and reason and law. I can grant that. That's the state of humanity, right? More than the state of the world, even. It is the state of humanity. And our morals, right? Morals are a personal interpretation of the tribe's ethics. And so our ethics, and not our morals, are determined by our society and the beliefs that they hold. We, as a collective, have agreed to certain stipulations and rules that we choose to abide by. You shall not steal, you will not murder, you do not commit adultery. These are the things that we have at some point decided as a whole that we are going to follow. These things are independent of the control systems in which they are originated. What do you mean, Ben? I mean that the Jews were not responsible for people saying, hey, it's a bad thing to murder people. They're not responsible for people saying it's a bad thing to commit adultery. These things are pretty close to universally accepted. And it doesn't matter which control system that you have. So if you're in Judaism, that is a control system, and they have the same morals as Christianity, which is a completely different control system. Both of them are control systems. Both of them are meant to keep you from something, but they do so by sharing these common laws and making you think that they are the originator thereof. They are not. We, as humanity, abide by rules here in this corporeal existence that we agreed to before we got here, in my estimation. And so it is beyond the state of the world, but rather the state of humanity. Where else could they come from? The earth that composes me derives from the earth, water from some other element, and air from its own source, the heat and fire from theirs. Nothing comes from nothing or returns to it. So, thought must derive from somewhere else as well. And this is another interesting thought exercise. I am a creator, right? And that's not just here on YouTube talking about things, right? I have written a book. It is self-published. It's available on Amazon, but you got to dig really hard to find it because it was not a very good one, right? I did it, but it's not a very good one. I write songs. I do that all the time. Some of them actually stick around, and a lot of them just get casually discarded, but I am doing it all the time. I have 2 pieces of intellectual property that I am developing in the form of video games in the Unreal Engine. Most of the thoughts did not come from me. As a matter of fact, when I was writing the book, I was constantly surprised by some of the turns that were taken in the plot. Those were the best parts. The parts that I didn't think about, but I rather just let them come through me. That ties back into both the state of humanity and the perception. 5. Death. Something like birth, a natural mystery, elements that split and recombine. Not an embarrassing thing, not an offense to reason or our nature. That is absolutely true. You are indeed meant to die. And one of humanity's greatest problems is our unrelenting desire not to. I love my life these days. I fully want to be engaged in my life these days, but I am not in any way, shape, or form scared of the other side. I have detailed the reasons quite extensively in several of the playlists, but I do believe there is something on the other side. I believe we came from somewheres and that we will return somewheres, and it is not a place of punishment any more than this is. We are here for the experience of this, to learn things, to do things, and to have the experience. Death is a natural part of that. The grief process is a natural part of that, but dying is a fundamental part of that. Knowing that your time is short, knowing that you have this brief breath in the entire expanse of eternity to do something with. And yet, there is the other side, that you will one day quit breathing. There will be no more you here. I believe there will be a you somewhere else, but it is nothing to be afeared of. Most of our problems these days are from our artificial attempts to extend that life. Pharmaceuticals serve a purpose, but most of the things that we use pharmaceuticals for could actually be taken care of through natural means. Your high blood pressure, your high cholesterol, your heart problems, obesity, all of these things are better taken care of through discipline. They are better taken care of you doing the thing that you know you need to do. If your cholesterol is high, change your diet. If you're fat, exercise. That is how that's supposed to work. Not to take Ozempic and to deprive yourself of the nutrients that you are required to intake to survive. If you look at these people taking this Ozempic today, they look like death. They look like they should already be gone, but it is an attempt to elongate their life in the wrong manner. Rather than doing it through discipline, they seek to do it through pharmaceuticals, and that is harming you. 6. That sort of person is bound to do that. You might as well resent a fig tree for secreting juice. Anyway, before the long, you'll both be dead and soon forgotten. There are people who are here to learn lessons of the not-so-beautiful nature. They are fully engaged in doing the wrong things, and those persons are just bound to do that. You probably know somebody with diabetes. They have the ability to lie about anything. They can just spout it out and convince themselves all in the same breath that something is true that is not. They cannot, they're bound to do that. You might as well resent a fig for secreting juice. There is no separation of the two. Choose not to be harmed and you won't feel harmed. Don't feel harmed and you haven't been. No one can give you offense. You have to take it. You have to decide, hey, that word offends me. That action offends me. I don't like what you're doing. That offends me. That's the harm that he's talking about here. It is not physical harm, because it doesn't matter whether I choose it or not. I have been harmed. It does not matter if anybody else chooses it or not. There is physical problems that can happen, and you have been harmed. And so he is talking about the emotional harm here, right? Choosing to be offended, choosing to pick up the baggage of offense. People choose baggage all of the time. they don't like to hear that either, right? They love to say, well, I'm just depressed. No, you're not. If you're running around and you're telling everyone that you're depressed, you're not depressed. You are choosing depression. That's different. You are deciding that that's going to make you happy, to have people pity you. That is what you're doing. If you are actually depressed, you are probably unaware of the fact. Somebody has to come up to you and say, hey, bruh, when's the last time you took a bath? When's the last time you ate something? Those are the type of things that happen to you when you are in a depressive state. The same with anxiety. When you are overcome and you're hyperventilating, that's anxiety. When you're worried about this bill that is coming, sometimes that can be anxiety. But for the most part, the things that we convince ourselves we are anxious about is not. It is us choosing to be anxious about something. And again, there is some intervention chemically that can happen, that can help you if you are in the state. But there is no pill out there that is ever going to do anything for you if you are choosing to be depressed. If you are choosing to be anxious, if you are choosing to be violent, there is nothing in a pharmacy that is going to help you. It doesn't matter how long you take it. And if you are taking those pills that are meant to be a stopgap for people in the state of, if you're taking those for longer than 2 years, your doctor is not doing you any help. They're just using you as a customer to come in and get that money. And it is a simple fact of life. You don't have to like that, but it is true. People choose to be depressed all the time. If you broke up with your girlfriend in high school and you're 40 years old and you're still pining away from that girlfriend in high school, you are choosing to be depressed. It is the same for a multitude of things, not just that one particular thing. If you got your ass beat 6 months ago and you're still choosing to be bitter behind that, you are choosing to be bitter behind that. It can ruin your life only if it ruins your character. Otherwise, it cannot harm you inside or out. And again, this is not physical problems. Somebody with a sword can absolutely harm you both inside and out. If it ruins your character, it can harm you. But even then, it's a iffy thing, right? Somebody talking smack about you, while it should not be tolerated, is going to be a fact of life. I once broke up with a girl. I'm not going to call her name, but it was when I was in the Navy. She cheated on me in a rather egregious circumstance, right? She came to visit me while I was on leave in the Navy, and she wound up sleeping with the guy whose house I was staying at because I lived on the ship. We were staying in this apartment, and she cheated on me with his roommate while I was there and asleep. And then went home and told everybody that I beat her. And everybody believed it. I've got one of my blood relatives running around where I grew up telling people that I got kicked out of the Navy because I was a racist. And that's not true. I got kicked out of the Navy because I was a shitbag, but not that particular flavor. I had all kinds of problems, but that wasn't it. That wasn't the one. But that's my blood relative running out there destroying my character. But you know what? It don't make no difference. That has zero bearing on my life. If I run into the people that believe that, if you believe that about me, then it doesn't hurt me. There's no harm. The people who know me cannot harm me by that, right? You cannot go to my wife and tell her anything about my character that she does not already know. You cannot go to my children and do the same thing, or my parents and do anything, or my friends. You cannot ruin my character to those who know me, so it cannot harm me. It can harm you professionally, right? If somebody is lying about you in a professional manner, that can harm you, and so take action. But for the most part, anything anybody says about you is temporary, and it doesn't really matter in the long run. 9. It was for the best, so nature had no choice but to do it. That is a hard lesson to learn sometimes. I believe that fully and completely. I believe that we are here for individual lessons, and some of those lessons are pretty terrible. This being attributed to nature, I assign to divine providence, right? I believe that God has a contingency plan for every single decision that you get to freely make. And so, you get to freely make decisions. And however that decision happens to play out, there is a plan in place for it, and therefore the things that happen to you are for you to learn things. I believe that there are what I call bottlenecks, things that you absolutely cannot avoid no matter what choices you make. I believe that those are, in large part, soul contracts that you have made prior to incarnating on this planet. So some of them can be pretty rough. I have a personal story and I'm going to relay it, but I was raped as a child. It took me a long time to be able to say that with the equanimity that I have now. I believe that that was for my best. That's a hard one, right? I was so young, I had zero control in the situation whatsoever. I was 4 or 5. It's a little bit unclear in my mind when it was, but it's there. I chose on a soul level to be a temptation in that particular spot. That doesn't mean that he had to do the thing that he did, but I chose before I came here to be that temptation. And if he would have chosen a different route, our lives would have taken a different route, and that would have been a natural thing. But that bottleneck is the nature that he's talking about here, right? That choice that he had to make, I was a participant in and had no volition in it whatsoever. It was not my fault, right? That's not what I am implying when I say that there is a soul contract there. There was an agreement to be a temptation. And honestly, that is too much for a lot of people. Like, there's a lot of people who cannot accept that. And that's fine. You don't have to. There are other bottlenecks. There are other things. Most of them happen to you and set your course prior to you being 8 years old. Most of the things that are still affecting you today were put in motion prior to you having sovereignty in any real manner over yourself. They are formative events. They are the bottlenecks that nature has no choice to do. That every event is the right one. Look closely and you'll see that is what I have just explained. And I know that's absolutely going to set some people off, but it is what it is. Not just right with not just the right one overall, but right. As if someone had weighed it out with scales. Keep looking closely like that and embody it in your actions. Goodness, what defines a good person? Keep to it in everything you do. This is the other side of that bottleneck, right? You have a choice about your actions. You have the choice. Right? You don't get to choose the circumstances. You get to choose the reaction to the circumstances. I could be a very bitter person. I was for decades. I had all kinds of anger issues, and like that particular bottleneck was not the only bottleneck in my life by a long shot. But I could have taken that bottleneck and gotten mad about it. I could have taken any of the bottlenecks that I have and gotten mad about it, but instead, I am choosing to be better because of it. I have had an experience that most people won't. And I am here now as an example to those who have. To those who have been through the same trials that I have, I get to identify with you. I believe that that was for my betterment, regardless of the circumstances. If you don't know me, I have a very rough childhood. Very rough childhood. If I sat down and told you about it, you would call me a liar. And so I don't expound upon it in linear order because it is so fantastically wild, the things that have happened to me. But I think that all of them were for my betterment. All of them led to me being right here in this chair right now talking to you. And you, hopefully, getting a little bit of knowledge and a little bit of understanding about the greater functioning of the world. I really do believe that. I mean, fundamentally, the bad things happen for a reason too. And while they can be extremely distressing, they are all of them for your betterment. Tough lessons, I know. 11. Not what your enemy sees and hopes that you will, but what's really there. Pay attention to the actuality of the situation. Do not be distracted by misdirection. Know your enemy. I did Sun Tzu. Like, all of that is wrapped up in this. Keep yourself focused upon the things that actually are. It is really easy to get caught up in the things that are not, and I'm going to get political again. Here we go. Very fine people. Are you aware of what those words mean? I bet you're not. If you're on one side, you might. And if you're on the other side, you probably don't. And it really is that simple of a definition. I have a guy that I love. He was one of the best people I ever knew in my entire life. And he is completely deceived by what the enemy is placing before him. He fully believes that Trump called Nazis very fine people. And even though if you go back and watch a 30-second clip, you can see that that is not true. There are people who believe dictator on day one, even though you can go back and watch a 30-second clip and prove it untrue. Yes, he said that particular phrasing, but not in the context by which the enemy is placing it. And so it is up to you to discern the actual truth of the situation, to understand that no, he specifically said, and I'm not talking about the white nationalists because they deserve to be condemned completely. That literally came out of his mouth, and fully half of the country refuses to see it. Not what your enemy sees and hopes that you will, but what's really there. 12. Two kinds of readiness and are constantly needed. To do only what the logos of authority and law directs, with the good of human beings in mind. And 2, to reconsider your position when someone can set you straight or convert you to his. But your conversion should always rest on the conviction that it's right or benefits others, nothing else. Not because it's more appealing to be popular. And again, we're going to get personal. That's what I do over here. We relate to personal things. If you are unaware, I have a playlist that is linked up here. It is 161 videos long. There are more that used to be in there, but I took them out because they were prior to the actual study, right? It is the unconventional Bible study, if you don't know. I used to be a fairly devout Christian. I was going to go to seminary. I wanted to be a pastor. And yet, I decided one day, I'm going to sit down and we're going to read this book together. And it completely changed me because I was put right. I was shown the actual things that are said rather than the things that I always thought that were true. Right? The things that I had been taught were true. The things that I thought were reality, they weren't. And it was because of the conviction of reading the book that I have changed my stance and that I take such a vocal against that now. I do not go attack people with it. I talk about it in my personal stuff on my personal page, and by personal I mean this public one. My conversion was because of this. If you present me with the evidence, I will change my mind. It doesn't matter how firmly I hold to a belief. If I am shown proof to the contrary I shall be. And that is it. And that's why right now I live in a house divided. It is why I alone stand against everyone I know. It is not an easy path. It is not a productive one, right? It's not beneficial in the monetary way. But that doesn't matter to me. I'm not here for the monetary way. Money is going to come. That is part of what I am doing, but that is not my goal. My goal is to be correct in every single instance. And I normally, if I get into deep speculation in one of these videos, you will hear me say, if you come to me with proof or with an argument that I haven't considered, I will consider your argument. And if you are correct, I will make a public video showing and saying why I was wrong. That is who I am on a fundamental level. If you prove me wrong, I will admit I am wrong. But if not, I will stand as firmly as need be on what I know. I know that Judaism was formed based upon lies, that it is a feeding fountain of evil people, and that anything based upon it has to necessarily be wrong. But I came to that because I was willing to be corrected. 13. You have a mind? Yes. Well, why not use it? Isn't that all you want? For it to do a job? Yes. 14. You have functioned as a part of something. You will vanish into what produced you, or be restored, rather, to the logos from which all things spring, by being changed. I believe that. I do believe. Like, Christianity, here we go. Christianity has this word wrong. This logos. It is wrong in your interpretation. If you are a Christian, I'm sorry to step on your toes with this one, but logos does not mean Jesus. It was the word by which the entirety of everything was formed. It was the thing from which all things spring. It was the I am statement of God when he created light and the earth and darkness and all of the things. He said I am, and it was the same as logos. I did a whole video on that. Is the I am video. At least the title, like the thumbnail was that. I can't remember if the video was actually titled that, but the thumbnail says the I am. The logos, to me, is God. And it is, indeed, that from which we all spring. I believe in God, absolutely. God is. He is me. He is you. He is the space between me and you, and the space between me and you. He is everything you can see and everything that you can't. That is logos. Everything comes from logos and will return by being changed. All of that is true. 15. Many lumps of incense on the same altar. One crumbles now, one later, but it makes no difference, and that is talking about mortality. Right? We don't really need to dive into that one. It is pretty much encompassed in what we just said about the logos. 16. Now they see you as a beast, a monkey, but in a week they'll think you're a god if you rediscover your beliefs and honor the logos. That seems a little bit personal right there. That seems like that was maybe something going on in his life. Maybe he wasn't honoring logos and this was him telling himself to do so. Now they see you as a beast, a monkey, but in a week they'll think you're a god if you rediscover your beliefs and honor the logos. That seems personal. It is true, but it seems personal. 17. Not to live as if you had endless years ahead of you. Death overshadows you. While you're alive and able, be good. Don't put off for tomorrow that which is best done today. Live your life fully engaged. Take control of your life, your destiny. Grab the reins of responsibility for your greater purpose. 18. The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do. Only what you do. Is this fair? Is this the right thing to do? Not to be distracted by their darkness. To run straight for the finish line, unswerving. And again, this goes back to, I see what you cheer, boo away. It doesn't matter what you think about me. It really doesn't. Like, I am here to reveal things that have been hidden in a very real way. And part of that is that people are going to disagree. They are going to come at me with smoke, is what I call it. Bring me all the smoke you want. I am not distracted by your darkness. You believe in killing children. You believe in adultery. You believe in lying. You believe in theft. I don't. And so I do not practice them. Nothing that you do is going to affect me. I am not going to participate in your shit. Do not be distracted by their darkness. Run for the finish line unswervingly. That is me. 19. People who are excited by posthumous fame forget that these people, the people who remember them, will soon die too. And those after them in turn, until their memory, passed from one to another like a candle flame, gutters and goes out. True. But suppose that those who remembered you are immortal and your memory undying. What good would it do you? And I don't just mean when you're dead, but in your own lifetime. What use is praise except to make your lifestyle a little more comfortable? You're out of step, neglecting the gifts of nature to hand on someone's words, the future. I don't know that we need any more extrapolation than that than what we've already done, right? Live your life according to your values. What people say about you really doesn't matter. 20. Beautiful things of any kind are beautiful in themselves and sufficient to themselves. Praise is extraneous. The object of praise remains what it was, no better and no worse. This applies, I think, even to beautiful things in ordinary life, physical objects and artworks. Does anything genuinely beautiful need supplementing? No more than justice does, or truth, or kindness, or humility. Are any of those improved by being praised, or damaged by contempt? Is an emerald suddenly flawed if no one admires it, or gold, or ivory, or purple, lyres, knives, flowers, bushes? The physicality of life is not affected by the praise or disapproval of any men. That is true. Those things remain regardless. Now, again, you can derive pleasure from someone praising you for something that you have done, but it is fleeting praise, and while it is worthy to do things that are praiseworthy, it should not be for the praise that you do those things. It should be simply because those things should be done. 21. If our souls survive, how does air find room for them, all of them, since the beginning of time? How does the earth find room for all the bodies buried in it since the beginning of time? They linger for whatever length of time, and then, through change and decomposition, make room for others. So too with the souls that inhabit the air. They linger a little and then are changed, diffused and kindled into fire, absorbed into the logos from which all things spring, and so make room for new arrivals. One possible answer. But we shouldn't think of only the mass of buried bodies. There are the ones consumed on a daily basis by us and by other animals. How many are swallowed up like that, entombed in the bodies of those nourished by them? And yet there is room for them all, converted into flesh and blood, transformed into air and fire. How is the truth of this determined? Through analysis, material, and cause. Okay, so I believe that the soul is eternal, and I believe that it is outside of the physical. So you don't need room for it. You just return to whatever the source is. I don't even need the clear definition of that. As far as the bodies disappearing, that happens, but you could take the entire population of the world and place it in Texas with elbow room. I think it broke down to everybody would get an acre or something of that nature, or like a quarter acre, I think, for the entire population of the world, just in one state in the United States. And we're overpopulated, right? All of the bodies throughout all of humanity could probably approximate something similar, right? Maybe not in Texas, maybe in the United States, maybe in a couple of the states. But there is probably room for all of them if they were indeed here. Now, they dissolve, that is true, but the argument is that everything changes and you fade away. That's what it goes through. 22. Not to be driven this way and that, but always to behave with justice and see things that they are. That we've already dealt with. 23. To the world, your harmony is mine. Whatever time you choose is the right time, not late, not early. That is determinism. I do not believe in determinism. I believe that the outcome will come out right. I do. And in a way that is determinism, but it is because of the contingency plan, right? If you do this, this is going to happen. But if you do this, this is going to happen. And both of them are good. I believe that the one we are on is always the best one. And so in a way, I am with this determinism, but you get to choose, in my estimation. It is part of the process of incarnation. To nature. What of the turn of your seasons brings me fall like ripe fruit? All things are born from you, exist in you, and return to you. The poet says, dear city of Cecrops, can't you bring yourself to say of Zeus? I'm not familiar with this, so I'm not going to try to expound upon it. 24. If you seek tranquility, do less. Or, more accurately, do what's essential, what the logos of a social being requires, and in the requisite way, which brings a double satisfaction to do less better. Because most of what we say and do is not essential. If you can eliminate it, you'll have more time and more tranquility. Ask yourself at every moment, is this necessary? But we need to eliminate unnecessary assumptions as well, to eliminate the unnecessary actions that follow. Jordan Peterson started me on my journey of transformation. And he did so in one of his lectures. I'm not sure which one because there are a lot of them and I watched a good deal of them. He said something like, to make every decision as though you were making it for someone for whom you cared about. And then, one day, make that person you. And that is really close to what is being intimated right here. Do that thing which is best for you. That doesn't mean worse for anyone else, but instead best for you. And normally, best for you does not include in any way, shape, or form worse for others. Most of the time, it is you improving yourself. And another thing that he had said was, what would your life be like if you lived according to that which you know you should do? Something along those lines. And you know the action that you are supposed to take. You know the actions that you are not supposed to be taking. And if you can eliminate from yourself those actions which you are not supposed to be taking and instead focus on the ones that you are supposed to, your life gets better. What happens if you live not at 100% but at 70%? Because chances are you are well below 50% of your potential. Most of the time, most people are envious of idleness, right? They like to sit around and watch mindless things on TV. They don't like to learn things, right? Even what we're doing here in a large way is extraneous. It is not necessary for you to listen to me. I am probably one of the only YouTubers that actively work to put myself out of a job. I am trying every day to help people to deal better with their life so they don't have to listen to me on how to deal better with their life. Do that thing which is necessary. And eliminate unnecessary assumptions as well. Try to assume the best. 25. And then you might see what the life of the good man is like. Someone content with what nature assigns him and satisfied with being just and kind himself. I agree with that without any exception. 26. You've seen that. Now look at this. Don't be disturbed. Uncomplicate yourself. Someone has done wrong to himself. Something happens to you good. It was meant for you by nature, woven into the pattern from the beginning. Life is short. That's all there is to say. Get what you can from the present, thoughtfully and justly. Unrestrained moderation. I am a big one for preaching moderation here. We are not about exclusion over here. I preach it all of the time. There's nothing wrong with taking a drink. There is a problem with staying drunk. There's nothing wrong with having sex. There's a problem, something wrong with having sex with anybody you want. Moderation is the key to life. Unrestrained moderation. This thing is not going to harm you in small, right? Outside of fentanyl, right? Or things of that nature. There are things that you absolutely do need to be restrained in moderation. But for the most part, largely, that's not true. You are meant to have fun in this life. You are not meant to be chased. You are not meant to never inebriated. Those things are not meant to be part of your life. They can be, but they're not meant to be. Life is short. Embrace it. Have fun with it. Pursue worthy goals always. Thoughtfully, justly. 27. An ordered world or a mishmash, but still an order. Can there be order within you and not in everything else? In things so different, so dispersed, so intertwined? We've talked about that already. 28. Character. Dark, womanish, obstinate. Wolf, sheep, child, fool, cheat, buffoon, salesman, tyrant. That's interesting because this appears to be self-reflection. 29. Alien. Noun. One who doesn't know what the world contains or how it operates. Fugitive. Noun. One who evades his obligations to others. Blind. Adjective. One who keeps the eyes of his mind shut tight. Poor. Adjective. Requiring others. Not having the necessities of life in one's own possession. Rebel. Noun. One who is rebellious. One who withdraws from the logos of nature because he resents its workings. It produced you. Now it produces this. Schismatic. Noun. One who separates his own soul from others with the logos. They should be one. Yes and no. Right. There are several things in here, and these are all not normal definitions of the thing, right? They are true, however. If you don't know how the world operates, then yes, you are an alien to it. If you are evading your obligations, you are a fugitive from responsibility. If you keep your eyes shut, you are blind to the realities of life. If you require others and do not have the necessities of life in your own possession, you are poor. If you are rebellious, you are a rebel. If you separate yourself from the logos, then you are a rebel to the logos. And one who separates his own soul from others with the logos. This is the only one that I really take exception with. And not because it is a definite thing, right? This is a definition, which is kind of definite, but schismatic. Yeah, I agree. I am schismatic from people who are dogmatic. I am schismatic from those who are unintentional in their decisions. I am schismatic from them. I am choosing to be separated from them in the logos, knowing full well that we both will return. We should be one, but I cannot be that which is against my nature. I can't. I cannot condone theft. I cannot condone adultery. I cannot condone murder. I am separate from those who would. 30. A philosopher without clothes and one without books. I have nothing to eat, says he, and he stands there half naked. But I subsist on the logos, and when nothing to read, I subsist on it too. That's interesting. I'm not sure what that means, right? A philosopher without clothes and one without books. I have nothing to eat and nothing to read. Yeah, I don't know what to say to that. 31. Love the discipline you know and let it support you. Entrust everything willingly to the gods and then make your way through life, no one's master and no one's slave. Agreed. Find the discipline that you will accept, right? My discipline started with getting up every single morning at the same time and following a routine. I needed that. I needed it set for myself, by myself. I don't need somebody else's routine. I need my own. And so I get up every single morning. I drink 3 extra large cups of coffee in about an hour and a half to 2 hours. And then I get out and I walk and I pray and I meditate every single day. If it is not buckets of rain falling from the sky, every single day I am doing that. That's the discipline I know, and it supports me. It helps me immensely. I have lost 40 pounds. I have completely changed my physique. I have altered my destiny by doing the things that are disciplined for me. So find the thing that you are willing to do. For me, it was starting to walk because I was scared for my life, right? I was attempting to artificially extend because in 2019 I got sick. I couldn't breathe for a couple of months, and I decided at the end of 2019 to start walking because of the sickness that got me. 32. The age of Vespian, for example. People doing the exact same things: marrying, raising children, getting sick, dying, waging war, throwing parties, doing business, farming, flattering, boasting, distrusting, plotting, hoping others will die, complaining about their own lives, falling in love, putting away money, seeking high office and power. And that life they led is nowhere to be found. Or the age of Trajan, the exact same things, and that life too, gone. Survey the records of other eras, and see how many others gave their all and soon died and decomposed into the elements that formed them. But, most of all, run through the list of those you knew yourself, those who worked in vain and who failed to do what they should have remained fixed on and found satisfaction in. A key point to bear in mind: the value of attentiveness varies in proportion to its object. You're better off not giving the small things more time than they deserve. Don't sweat the petty stuff, pet the sweaty stuff. Take time to enjoy your life. You should be gainfully employed. You should be diligently working towards that gainful employment. But it should not be the consumption of your life. That is a lesson that I am still in the process of learning. I have a hard time not being productively engaged because I feel worthless most of the time because I am disabled. I feel like because I am not going out into the world and financially contributing that I should be working harder all the time. It is something fundamentally wrong in here, and I am rewiring that in part through what we're doing here. But it's mostly through finding the satisfaction in what I do, right? I do these videos and I am happy with them. I am perfectly content doing this. This fulfills that need for me, for the most part. Like I said, I have creative ventures. I want to create, and so I invest myself into those things. And most of the time, I wind up ignoring some things that are probably important. I don't sit down on the couch and watch TV. My wife does. I am sure she would like me to join her. I don't like the shows. Like, there is very few shows that I can sit down and watch without just being absolutely disgusted. And that's not me trying to cast judgment, right? I just exclude myself. But I need to find ways to do something similar in a recreational manner, because I spend too much time focused on the here and now and the work, and I need to relax. Tomorrow I'm going to see my son in the band, right? He is part of the Golden Band at Tigerland, and their first home game is tomorrow, and so I'm going to go watch him march down the hill and watch him do his performance. That is doing this. I need to do more things along that nature, and don't sweat the petty stuff. I used to get really tied into politics. I'm still fairly tied, but it is not in the same manner. I'm not constantly hammering Facebook with memes. I'm not constantly trolling comments. I'm not constantly engaged in the same manner that I was 4 years ago or 8 years ago. It is still important, but most of the trappings are petty. The fights and the things, the lies, all of that stuff is just petty. It doesn't deserve my time. And so I don't give it to him anymore. I spend my time here doing this, helping humanity get better. 33. Words once in common use now sound archaic, and the names of the famous dead as well. Camillus, Cassio, Volius, Donatus, Scipio and Cato, Augustus, Hadrian and Antonius. And everything fades so quickly, turns into legend, and soon oblivion covers it. And those are the ones who shone. The rest, unknown, unasked for, a minute after death. What is eternal fame? Emptiness. Then what should we work for? Only this: proper understanding, unselfish action, truthful speech, a resolve to accept whatever happens as necessary and familiar, flowing like water from that same source and spring. I do believe that. Like, we've covered that already here today, so. 34. Hand yourself over to Clotho voluntarily and let her spin you into whatever she pleases. If you were unaware, I'm not going to get into it, but this is the fates, right? There are 3 of them. One of them draws the line. One of them cuts the line, and one of them weaves the line. Clotho is the weaver. And that is the line is your life into the weave or the tapestry that is the world. 35. Everything transitory, the knower and the known. Yes. 36. Constant awareness that everything is born from change. The knowledge that there is nothing nature loves more than to alter what exists and make new things like it. All that exists is the seed of what will emerge from it. You think the only seeds are the ones that make plants or children? No, go deeper. Yes, the seeds of change are being planted all of the time. Our particular experiment in freedom here in the United States was born from the seeds planted in the republics of Rome and Greece. And so those seeds bore fruit centuries later. There are other seeds of change. The Emancipation Proclamation was a seed of change, if not a direct agent. There are many seeds of change hidden throughout history. Some of them great, some of them small, but they are all there, and they are not just plants and children. 37. On the verge of dying and still weighed down, still turbulent, still convinced external things can harm you, still rude to other people, still not acknowledging the truth that wisdom is justice. And again, this is self-reflection, right? I am getting close to the end, and still I have the same problems. Enlightenment is a process. Most people do not achieve it. Most people do not even attempt to achieve it. You do eventually get to the point where most of the things of the world do not hold the same importance that they did. 38. Look into their minds at what the wise do and what they don't. Study other people who learn from their mistakes. 39. Nothing that goes on in anyone else's mind can harm you, nor can the shifts and changes in the world around you. Then where is harm to be found? In your capacity to see it. Stop doing that, and everything will be fine. Let the part of you that makes the judgment keep quiet, even if the body is attached to, is stabbed or burnt, or stinking with pus, or consumed by cancer. Or, to put it another way, it needs to realize that what happens to everyone, bad and good alike, is neither good nor bad. That what happens in every life, lived naturally or not, is neither natural nor unnatural. And again, I do agree in part, but in part I absolutely vehemently disagree. 40. The world as a living being, one nature, one soul. Keep that in mind, and how everything feeds into that single experience, moves with a single motion, and how everything it helps produce everything else, spun and woven together. Yes. We dealt with that earlier, right? 41. A little wisp of soul carrying a corpse. I like that. You are the wisps of the soul carrying the corpse into the being. Epictetus. 42. There is nothing bad in undergoing change or good in emerging from it. I don't know about that. Time is a river, a violent current of events glimpsed once and already carried past us, and another follows and is gone. I think that this is the actual origin of no man steps into the river twice, right? The water is different and so is the man. Same thing. Everything is going to keep moving whether you want it to or not, and you can never return home. You can go back to the place that was home, but it's never going to be the same. You have left, you are different, and therefore everything has to be different. 44. Everything that happens is as simple and familiar as the rose in spring, the fruit in summer, disease, death, blasphemy, conspiracy, everything that makes stupid people happy or angry. Yeah, we've talked about that already extensively. 45. What follows coheres with what went before. Not like a random catalog whose order is imposed upon it arbitrarily, but logically connected. And just as what exists is ordered and harmonious, what comes into being betrays an order too. Not a mere sequence, but an astonishing concordance. 46. Remember Heraclitus. When earth dies, it becomes water. Water, air, air, fire, and back to the beginning. those who have forgotten where the road leads. They are at odds with what is all around them, the all-directing logos, and they find alien what they meet with every day. All things are the same as where that's going, right? Our words and actions should not be like those of sleepers, for we act and speak in dreams as well, or of children copying their parents, doing and saying only what we have been told. Absolutely. Find your own path. 47. Suppose that a god announced that you were going to die tomorrow or the day after. Unless you were a complete coward, you wouldn't kick up a fuss about which day it was. What difference could it make? Now recognize that the difference between years from now and tomorrow was just as small. Live your life. Again. 48. Don't let yourself forget how many doctors have died after furrowing their brows on how many deathbeds. How many astrologers after pompous forecast about others' ends. How many philosophers after endless disquisitions on death and immortality. How many warriors after inflicting thousands of casualties themselves. How many tyrants after abusing the power of life and death atrociously, as if they were themselves immortal. How many whole cities have met their end? Helike, Pompeii, Herculaneum, and countless others. And all the ones you know yourself, one after another. One who laid out another for burial, and was buried himself, and then the man who buried him, all in the short space of time. In short, know this, human lives are brief and trivial. Yesterday a blob of semen, tomorrow embalming fluid, ash. You mean 1,300 years ago they knew the earth was round and that semen got people pregnant? To pass through this brief life as nature demands, to give up without complaint. Like an olive that ripens and falls, praising his mother and thanking the tree that he grew up on. Again, that is something that we have expounded upon. It is a recurring theme. He was getting older and approaching it, and his wife had just died, and his brother had just died, and so that's something that you think about, right? I hope that I go into death with equanimity. I don't want to go, but I am ready to go. 49. To be like the rock that the waves keep crashing over, it stands unmoved and raging of the sea that falls still around it. See mental alchemy in the esotericism. 49a. It's unfortunate that this has happened. No, it's fortunate that this has happened, and I've remained unharmed by it. Not shattered by the present or frightened of the future. It could have happened to anyone, but not everyone could have remained unharmed by it. Why treat the one as a misfortune rather than the other as fortunate? Can you really call something a misfortune that doesn't violate human nature? Or do you think something that's not against nature's will can violate it? But you know what its will is. Does what's happened keep you from acting with justice, generosity, self-control, sanity, prudence, honesty, humility, straightforwardness, and all the other qualities that allow a person's nature to fulfill itself? So remember this principle when something threatens to cause you pain. The thing itself was no misfortune at all. To endure it and prevail is great good fortune. Again, accept things as they come. 50. A trite but effective tactic against the fear of death. Think of the list of people who had to be pried away from life. What did they gain by dying old? In the end, they all sleep 6 feet under. Cadecianus, Fabius, Julian, Lepidus, and all the rest. They buried their contemporaries and were buried in turn. Our lifetime is so brief, and to live it out in these circumstances, among these people in this body, nothing to get excited about. Consider the abyss of time past, the infinite future. 3 days of life or 3 generations. What's the difference? There's a big, massive difference. Again, this is a fatalistic view. I do not take that. I believe we are meant to embrace this life, to enjoy this life. Even though it's brief, it is here for a time. Enjoy it while you're here. 51. Take the shortest route, the one that nature planned, to speak and act in the healthiest way. Do that and be free of pain and stress, free of all calculation and pretension. And that's going to bring us to the end. Do things efficiently. Make sure that you are doing the correct thing and that you are doing it in the best manner possible. I don't know any other way to put that. This was a fairly decent little list of things to go through and to talk about. Hopefully, I brought a little bit of enlightenment and not too much confusion to a series of somewhat difficult topics. I do not hold the fatalistic approach to life. I hold the embrace your life, right? Is why I'm changing myself to more recreation, or else I would be doing other things to whatever. Or if I had the fatalistic view of life, like so many out there do today, that I would not be concerned about what was correct. I would not be concerned about justice. I would not be concerned about truth. I would be concerned about me, because then there is nothing else to be concerned about. I believe that we are all part of something bigger. We are here, all of us, for a reason. And sometimes those reasons are beautiful, wonderful, pleasant things. And sometimes they are horrible, atrocious, terrible things. Either way, they are meant to be. And they serve to prove a point, a lesson, that we are meant to pull from it. The divine cannot experience grief or pain. We do. And so that is what we are here to do. Experience those things. Live those things. Let your big emotions out in a safe manner. Don't hurt people. But like if you're angry, it's okay to be angry. If you're sad, it's wonderful to be sad. Let those things out of you. Don't hold them. They will poison you. A lot of what he talks about here will poison your soul. It's the reason why he's still so bitter. It's the reason why Nietzsche was still so bitter. You're looking at life wrong. Change your perspective. If you like what I'm doing over here, let me know down below. Give me a like, share, and a sub. Throw me a comment if you agree or disagree. If it remains respectful, it gets to remain up. And if you really like what I'm doing, hit me with that super thanks, because I am not a communist. To the crew, thanks for hanging out. I appreciate every single minute that you are here with me, and I am praying for you every single day. Until next time, I love you. God loves you. You are perfect, whole, and complete just the way that you are. And this has been Pitch Take. Peace.